it completely depends upon the concrete mix itself. So the more long-winded answer would be the ingredients in concrete are cement, aggregate, sand, water, and admixtures. And that cement is the glue that bonds everything together, and that's actually what creates the hard surface. And the more cement that's in the concrete mix, the more expensive that mix is, which helps impact the cure time. So a lot of times if we're dealing with a truck entrance, truck exit, something like that, we will specify in the paperwork that there needs to be a 24-hour mix. So for rough numbers, you're now looking at, say, 800 pounds of cement or more within that yard of concrete to get you to that point. If we're doing sidewalks, we're going to specify more of a, 4,500 PSI in 28-day, 3,000 PSI in 3-day type mix. And that's going to be more where you're dealing with 600 or 650 pounds of cement per cubic yard. So again, anything can be done. Obviously to keep a truck driver exit operational, you pay the upcharge and you make sure that the concrete mix has the cement needed. And then within 24 hours, you're back to operational. The, lighter duty areas is where you can kind of save a little bit of that money and spec them out a little bit less. Dolly pads are kind of the same way. So it's very site specific and very project driven. And we like to specify at a minimum, everything that we put down is 3,000 pounds in 72 hours. So all of our mixes, all of our drives are open within 72 hours. But if there is that need to get on there the next day or the next afternoon, then we bump up the cement in the mix and we make that happen.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about how do you know when the area is ready to be open from a concrete area? How do you know that you've hit the necessary cure time and it's at the strength it needs to be at?
So part of the quality control, quality assurance that takes place with all the concrete work is they do a third-party lab is typically hired out from either the supplier or the contractor, and they pull what are called cylinders, and they're 6 inches tall, 4-inch diameter. And as the concrete is being poured, they will take samples of those cylinders. Our specification manual calls out for one set of cylinders every 50 cubic yards. And then once those cylinders are done, the truck comes in, they pull those cylinders, they set them aside, and they do that throughout the day of pouring. And then the next day they will come out, grab those cylinders. And if we're looking for 24 hours, they'll take those cylinders back to the lab. The lab then does a compression test on them and make sure that we are getting that over 3,000 PSI on those small test cylinders. And as soon as we have that number, then we're acceptable and we're ready to open. So it's off-site destructive testing. Nothing happens to your new slab or anything of that nature. There is some new technology that you can put some electrodes in the concrete and different things like that. And it's supposed to kind of tell you what the concrete is doing. But we as Benchmark are firm believers in tried and true methods. And once we know that some of those methods are tried, true, and tested, then we will share those with our clients. Otherwise, we know breaking cylinders is the best, most informative option, and that's what we stick with.
I had a job where we had to replace the concrete under an active dock door and not close it down. Like Jason mentioned, there's many different recipes of concrete. And we've got the schedule for the deliveries at that door. There's going to be a delivery at 11 a.m. and another one at 4 p.m., let's say. So before 11 a.m., we tore the existing concrete out and road plated it. Let the semi back in for his delivery. The semi left. Then as soon as the semi's gone, we formed it up and poured it with a super high early mix. An 8 or a 9 bag is what they call it. Jason, I don't know what the pounds on that is necessarily, but it's a super high curing concrete that's ready for traffic in less than 12 hours. Poured it up, and by the time they get back for the afternoon run, they're ready to rock and roll again. So on 2 doors, 2 of 3 doors, or 1 of 3 doors, you start getting those joints too close to neighboring semi trailers. You almost need a door and a half to do one.
Okay.
Unless you've got some good width between your doors. If your doors are tight against each other and there's not a lot of room between the trucks, might need to do 1.5. Might need to take 2 out of service to get 1 done.
comes down to knowing the functions of what's going on. I just wrapped up a project in Iowa, and the best thing we did was we had a meeting every morning at 7 a.m. and a guy over from shipping, not even in our work zone, not impacting any of his doors. The first thing he'd say to me is, Jason, I've got 42 trucks today. Okay, so I knew I had 42 trucks trying to find their way through my job site, not accessing any of my doors or anything else, just knowing that I had to figure those 42 out, make sure it was clear and easy, and security was there. So it's like, okay, which exit are you going to utilize this week? And it's like everybody's kind of mentioned already, communication is the thing. We ran under a little bit on the construction costs. So the facility had asked, hey, can you repair a couple potholes in front of the receiving doors? And I said, well, yes, but the contractor is going to want to do everything in one shot. So what can we do? And they're like, well, there's 2 receiving doors on this side, 1 receiving door on this side. But if we just use hand carts, how long is this going to take? I'm like, I need it from 6 a.m. till 6 a.m. the next day, 24 hours. They're like, oh, well, we'll just add a staff member and we'll use hand carts to move the material, 50 or 75 feet inside the building, and they can get it in and out of this door. I'm like, okay, perfect, problem solved. And then traffic control. Traffic control is key, as well as us as the consultant on site, always keeping our eyes open. Like Riley mentioned, people can't find their way into the grocery store we're working at or something. If you see that, you solve it. That's one of our responsibilities out there. It's like, make sure the traffic control is right. If you've got a truck driver that seems confused, walk up to the truck and ask him, where are you going? We as consultants learn the site. Oh, you're going over to this store? Okay, your easiest way there is go this way, go back out the exit and come back in. Oh, I didn't know we could come in that exit this week. Well, we are. That's what we're doing. So that should have gotten referenced to at security. And it's things like that. It's always thinking outside the box. And like I said, seriously understanding inside operations just as much as outside operations. And it can make anything and everything happen. That's part of our go-to on our challenge. I'm not on it. It's one of my projects, but one of our other consultants is on one right now that the site sees upwards of 300 trucks a day. It's currently 3-lane, and it all is getting updated with new electronics, new pavement, everything. And what we did with that one to start off right out of the gate was we widened it to give it a little more of a straight line access. And then we were able to utilize that widening, kind of how Riley mentioned before with the dock doors. We need that safe work zone. If you think about it, if you actually stand out there and watch concrete go down, the finishers need room to pull the brooms and pull the trowels and all this stuff. And you need that space, but we widened it and was able to cut them down to 2 lanes and then finish the one and made it wide enough where it was kind of a lane and a half, and then went to the opposite side. So then we were running 2 sides, and then eventually we ended up doing the middle. But the easiest thing and the most, the simplest thing is to widen it permanently. But there is also that option if the ground is level enough around it to just build a temporary lane. It's not perfect, and depending on the investments you want to do, our recommendation in a trucking lane that's stopping at a guard shack and getting checked in and all this stuff is always concrete. The vibration from the trucks and everything else just deteriorate the asphalt. It's just what happens. But if you wanted to create that 12 or 14 foot wide temporary lane, because it was a dire need, you could construct that out of aggregate and asphalt and just know that you're spending money on something that's not going to be permanently in place, but it will keep your operations up. And those are easily things that we can put into the bid documents and price out. And then you can actually see, okay, just for this amount of work, it's going to be $65,000. Is that justified to keep this operational or not? So there's a few ways around it, and we deal with it all the time. You guys aren't the only ones that see this coming in, and how do we stay operational? And a lot of times, again, it kind of goes back to personnel. Like I've seen sites that they actually show me the log and show how many trucks have been, submitted. But then I also see sites that my contact tells me, well, we have 150 trucks a day coming in, and I'm working in that area and I'm logging what's happening, and he's seeing 65 or 70. So sometimes bad information can really impact how a thing goes. So it's good, like I said, to make sure we've got good information, legitimate answers, and plenty of solution opportunities. And like Riley mentioned, if it's not popping into my head quick, I've got a handful of other guys that do this every day that I can reach out to say, hey, brainstorm with me on this one and help me out. And it's doable.